Good morning, friends, and welcome to Trans India Real People, Real Emotions. In the current scenario or current generation, how many people can spend almost 4 decades working in the same company? Our guest today has had an illustrious career of 38 years at Tata Motors. He is a legend, having been part of many initiatives and innovations. I still remember him jumping with joy when the Prima T1 racing trucks were flagged off for the first time at the Buth International Circuit. He and other members of the team had put in tremendous effort to show the world what India and Tata Motors was capable of. We feel privileged to capture the journey of Mr. R. Ramakrishnan, popularly known as Ramki, who retired recently after an illustrious career at Tata Motors. This is part one of our exclusive interaction with Ramki. To start with, can you take us through your journey at Tata Motors? How many years, how it all started?
Girish has spent almost 38 years short of a week in Tata Motors. I started as a graduate engineer training. This was at Jamshedpur
Okay.
in what's called the excavator division. It's no longer there in Tata Motors. It's
Right.
a separate company now, Tata Hitachi Construction Machinery.
Right.
So I joined in 1985 in Jamshedpur. For about a year, I was technically there. That was around the time when the company started the hydraulic machines in collaboration with Hitachi.
Okay.
And we were the first batch who were exposed to those machines. So within a few months of training itself, we were out in the field. So anyway, my first posting after that was in the south, was in Andhra Pradesh. That's where the Telugu Ganga project had started, and a lot of excavators are going into that part of the country for the project. The other thing is, a lot of Andhra contractors actually do jobs in different parts of the country, and that's a fact even now.
True.
And therefore, machines are going to different parts of the country, and we were all used because we were the first ones to learn about hydraulic excavators through Andhra, Tamil Nadu. Spent about 6-7 years in that business. After which the company introduced a scheme called Executive Selection Scheme.
Okay.
It's actually a fast track scheme where people at a certain level can move up 3 levels in the company.
Oh, that's interesting.
So we were one of the first batches in the executive selection scheme. Got picked in that, and automatically we had to move out of the parent unit. We had to move into the other unit.
Right.
So from excavator division, I moved on to the automobile business unit.
So that was your choice, or that was
Moving out of your existing division was mandatory. You can't go back to your existing division.
choosing the Tata Motors Auto division was your choice?
That was the only other division.
Of course.
So from the small part excavator division, I moved to the mainstream
Right.
automobile business unit.
And how was the commercial vehicle business at that time when you joined in?
Very basic, I must say. And we were virtual monopoly. There were only 2 players in the country.
Right.
And we were sitting at 85-87% market share. Wow. Barring South, Tamil Nadu mainly, and to a little bit Kerala, Andhra and Karnataka. We had a all India presence in Tata Motors.
Market share that
In
time.
many states, we were 100% market share.
Is it?
Jammu and Kashmir, Northeast, many parts of the North, Tata Motors was 100% market share.
I mean, in today's time, you can't imagine a 100% market share anywhere actually.
No product, no company, no country can have that.
So many years, 40 years almost. What changes have you seen in the commercial vehicle over the years?
Oh, plenty. First of all, if you look at the commercial vehicles, at the time I joined, and even early this century, you had some very basic vehicles, basic in terms of technology, and very few variants. There were hardly any variants to name, except for some tire change and this change and that change. There were no serious variants also. There were very few models, very few tonnage points. You look back now, 20-25 years hence, there is such a huge proliferation across the entire spectrum. So you have vehicles at every half ton or even lesser. If you look at the small commercial vehicles, that segment was not even there. It began about 20 years back, 2005. The mini trucks, the pickups,
Right.
they've really proliferated now. And now they are the largest segment in the commercial vehicles.
Absolutely.
The heavy trucks, the trucks itself was used to be just a 2-axle truck. 12 ton ke the pehle, then it became
Correct.
16 tons.
Right.
But today you look at the truck range, starting from 9.5 tons, goes right up to 55.
Absolutely.
And in terms of axles, what used to be just 2-axle trucks, and very few 3-axle trucks, which was primarily in the tippers and some tractor trailers. Today you have 2, 3, 4, 5 axles, and if you take tractor trailers, it's even 6 axles. And people are saying, can we add one more? Because they want to load more.
Lot more. But from an OEM's point of view, it's quite harrowing, you know. I mean, having so many spare parts along with it, the manufacturing process itself gets difficult, your driveline gets tough. You have a truck at every half ton, as you said. So, wasn't that tough for you as well?
It was tough if you tackled each tonnage point on its own. This is where the modular philosophy comes in.
Right.
So if you look at engines, if you look at gearboxes, and if you look at axles, instead of designing an engine, gearbox, and axle for a specific tonnage point, they're designed for a range.
Right.
And the engine, which can take up to, say, from 6 tons to 9 tons, within that you can have several horsepower points because of the change in fuel injection systems. Similarly, gears, your basic housing shafts may remain the same, but the gearing within that, you can choose different kinds of gearing, faster ratios, slower ratios for different vehicles. Ditto with axles. You design axles for a range of tonnages. You adjust the gear train, the crown wheel pinion, and the end gearing, depending on the tonnage of the vehicle, depending on the speed requirement, etc. With that, you are able to generate many options without complicating the designer's life or the manufacturer's life. That's how we approach the issue of proliferation of variety, by providing what the customer wants, at the same time ensuring that life doesn't become too complex within the company.
But what about the end customer? I mean, do they have a clear choice on what exactly they want? Because, you know, transporters are not known to be very educated per se, but so taking the right pick, how tough was that?
It's not an easy one, not just in commercial vehicles, but I think for most products, customers who have used something can share with you their experience of what is nice, what is not nice. And if there is a competitor's product they're using or a substitute product they're using, they can compare that and tell you, acha ye acha hai, wo acha hai, etc. So in commercial vehicles, they can talk about manufacturer B or manufacturer C and tell you what's good or bad about them. Or they can compare with railways and say what's good or what's bad because they're transporting.
Right.
So someone who is wanting to design any product has to listen to what the customer is saying as well as what he is not saying. And more often than not, if you have to be relevant to the customer, you have to look at who the customer is serving. You also have to look at what problems he or she has got in his business. If you provide solution to their problems, you have a product which is a winner. You have a solution which is a winner. So what was attempted at that time is not just look at the trucker or listen to what the trucker is saying that I want this, I want that. We also went and observed their operations. Some of us traveled in trucks for the complete trip where we could see where the loading was happening, where the unloading is happening, what are they facing on the way in terms of traffic on the road, in terms of issues on the road, night halting place, etc. Spending time with the driver who spends his lifetime inside the truck, you get a lot of inputs from the driver.
Absolutely.
He is the one who's feeling the vehicle day in and day out. And there is so much the driver can tell you about what's working for him, what's not working for him, what are his pain points. And by addressing those, you've created features, you've created solutions which even the transporter appreciates. Right. Ultimately, he's dependent on the driver entirely.
Very true.
And his customer is entirely dependent on the driver where the cargo is going.
Correct.
The other thing we did was to listen to the customer's customer.
Okay.
So if you take a car carrier, a transporter is not transporting his cars.
Right.
He's transporting it for a car company. or a scooter carrier or a tractor carrier. Similarly, if you look at petrochemicals, tankers, CNG tankers, lubricant tankers, etc., there is a petrochemical company which is moving the products using a transporter.
Right.
They have their own requirements. Usually they place their requirements on the transporter, and if you were to get from the transporter what they're saying, it starts to become like a Chinese whisper. Something is lost in the transmission.
Absolutely, yes.
So we went and spent time with the customer as well to understand what they want in their business. It threw a very different perspective in many of the times. It threw up a lot of surprises, threw up something as surprises for the transporters themselves. And when we went and started offering some of those as solutions, either as features or as variants or even totally new products, that's how we were able to meet customers' needs better and grow our market share, grow our volumes and so on. That kind of exercise benefited not just the company but the whole industry.
But do you think over the time, from selling just pure truck as a product, OEMs are now selling solutions, or rather they have to sell solutions?
They must sell solutions, completely agree. Have all of them begun doing it? Is all of the efforts towards solution? In my mind, there is still a lot more to do. First, within the solutions themselves, people are still stopping at designing a truck or designing a fully built truck, or at best bundling a maintenance contract along with it.
Right.
True solutions go far beyond that. And if you look at the entire transportation system, there are many players involved, there are many pieces involved.
Correct.
We are still nowhere near looking at the whole thing as an integrated piece in terms of designing. So today at OEM, for example, they work along with their vendors to get some technology. They work along with some of their main customers to understand their requirements, and some of the customers to understand their requirements. And they build a truck, build a body built vehicle, build a tractor trailer with AMC and a few other things. But if you still look at where the gaps are, at the point of production, goods are made and then they have to be loaded either onto rails or onto trucks.
Right.
There's a loading, unloading involved.
Correct.
That piece is left to the producer of the goods. There is not much of coordination or syncing between the manufacturer of the goods and the designer of the truck to see how this can be done seamlessly, how this can reduce the time, how this can reduce the wastage and damages. Second thing is transshipments. This is taking care of the transporter usually.
Yes.
The godowns where they have to unload, very few godowns in the country really have a proper docking where the truck can move in and the goods can be taken out seamlessly. A lot of time is spent there, a lot of damages happen there. Plus, you have inventory lying on wheels, which is a waste of money.
Absolutely.
And then from there on, when it has to move to the last mile, again there's a lot of loading, unloading, warehousing, etc. If all of this were to looked at in its entirety, probably we will come up with very different solutions which can cut down the logistics time, which can cut down the logistics cost, can cut down the logistics wastage. So whatever direction that today the ministry is talking about reducing the logistics cost from 13-14% of GDP to half of that, this is the kind of effort that will be required by all the players working in an integrated fashion. And even the other dimension is multimodal transport.
Yes.
That's a reality we have to move towards. There are advantages in rail, there are advantages in waterways, and therefore any of these people cannot look at designing their products in isolation. We have to work together seamlessly so that something can be loaded on rail, move into truck, move into the last mile transportation seamlessly for us to bring down the overall logistics cost and improve the efficiency.
We will continue our interaction with Ramki after this very short break. You are watching Trans.
क्या आप जानते हैं एक ट्रक ओनर के लिए सबसे मुश्किल काम क्या होता है? अपने ट्रक के लिए रिटर्न लोड खोजना।
पर अब ट्रैकेट ट्रांसपोर्ट मार्केट ने इसे आसान कर दिया है।
वो कैसे?
ट्रांसपोर्ट मार्केट टाइम पर ट्रैकेट ऐप में आए हुए लोड पर अपना बेस्ट रेट भेजें, माल की डिलीवरी की डेट और टाइम सिलेक्ट करें और सबमिट कर दें, और ऑर्डर कंफर्म होने पर व्हीकल असाइन करें। है ना आसान? तो देर किस बात की? प्ले स्टोर ऐप पर टाइप करें TRAKET ट्रैकेट और डाउनलोड करें ट्रैकेट ऐप।
स्कूल बच्चों का दूसरा घर होता है, और इस घर का ख्याल रखना एक प्रिंसिपल के लिए आसान नहीं। पढ़ाई के साथ बच्चों का आराम, उनकी सेफ्टी, छोटी से छोटी चीज़ मेरी प्रायोरिटी है। वैसे ही स्कूल बस चुनना भी एक बहुत बड़ा डिसीजन था। पेरेंट्स का पीस ऑफ माइंड, मैनेजमेंट का भरोसा और बजट साथ लिए चलना पड़ता है। इसीलिए कभी कभी फर्म भी बनना पड़ता है। आखिर कोई अपने बच्चों की जिम्मेदारी मुझे दे रहा है, तो कोई बजट की। लेकिन इतने सालों में एक चीज समझ आई है, अगर सही डिसीजन लें तो सबसे ज्यादा प्यार भी प्रिंसिपल को ही मिलता है।
चुनिए महिंद्रा क्रूजियर स्कूल बसेस। यह है मजबूत ट्यूबुलर स्ट्रक्चर, एंटी लॉक ब्रेकिंग, एंटी रोल बार, पैराबोलिक सस्पेंशन, IMAX, वाइडर सीट्स और बेस्ट इन क्लास माइलेज के साथ बच्चों के लिए सेफ और बाकी सब के लिए सबसे स्मार्ट चॉइस, महिंद्रा क्रूजियर स्कूल बस।
Welcome back to Trans India. Real people, real emotions. We are in conversation with Mr. R. Ramakrishnan, who spent almost 4 decades in Tata Motors. In fact, I was at a seminar recently where some OEMs are actually worried about, DFC started having its effect. They said goods may move significantly from road to rail. How much of a shift do you think that will happen? And will OEMs be affected by that?
We've been tracking this for the last 20 plus years. If anything, the percentage has shifted towards road transportation than towards rail. Well, it always is perceived as a threat, and it can potentially be a big threat. But there are some things that the rail also has to do. There is something that the road transport also has to do for both of them to coexist. Right. What do I mean by that? If you look at standalone cost per ton kilometer of transportation, for most commodities, rail is cheap, and especially bulk commodities, correct, rail is cheaper. Absolutely. And significantly cheaper. Yes. However, the proportion of road transport has been increasing. How do you explain that? To a large extent, in the last 2 decades, one would explain that because railways have not moved much. Railways have not improved much. They've not improved in terms of speed, they've not improved in terms of reliability, they've not improved in terms of service. Plus the standard issue about you have to reach goods to the rail and you have to take goods away from the rail. And if you add those pieces, then the transportation cost becomes something else. It comes very close to road transport.
Plus, multiple handling of cargo, that's also an issue.
That's also an issue. But dedicated freight corridor will definitely help to increase the efficiencies. It will cut down the transportation time significantly. And the moment you cut down time, you're cutting down inventory cost.
Absolutely.
That's a big one.
Big one, yes.
Okay. And here is where there's opportunity for road and rail to actually work in tandem, complement each other rather than compete each other. Well, the competition is healthy and both of them should try to bring down cost of transportation. They can also complement each other very well.
Very true.
So that seamlessly goods can move from rail to road to rail or vice versa, road to rail to road.
Yes.
And thus the total system can work. Going back to my earlier point,
right.
If the producers of goods, if railways and producers of vehicles with transporters and consumption point, we can all work together.
Correct.
Whole transportation systems can evolve, and then it will not be trucks the way the trucks look today, or rail wagons the way rail wagons look today. Right. You could have something which you can connect to a rail, multiple wagon, detach that, continue to a truck, it will go on road. Yeah. I saw somewhere just a few days ago, this is an experimental basis, but something like this is possible.
Can happen.
And together with the warehousing systems, if all of them were to integrate well, along with Industry 4, digital connectivity, artificial intelligence that is in vogue now and is the future, it can definitely cut down the transportation cost significantly and reduce the time from point of production to point of consumption.
So you've seen so many tech changes happening in these years. If you were to highlight the top three which have had a huge impact, what would those be?
I'll answer it in two parts, Girish. First of all, if I look at vehicle type specific, first let's take the medium and heavy trucks. Then I'll talk about small commercial vehicles, then about buses, and then overall commercial vehicles. Right. So first within the trucks, and I'll confine to this century, let's not talk about the previous century. 2-3 major changes have happened over the last 2 decades. One, the tonnage has gone up.
Right.
And tonnage has gone up because the number of axles on the vehicle has gone up. 2, the fuel efficiency per ton has actually gone up, which is a surprise because usually with higher tonnage, one would expect, and emission norms which I'll come to later, one would expect there would be a fuel penalty. Right. But actually in our country, what has happened is fuel efficiency per ton has ended up improving.
Courtesy the OEMs?
There's an infrastructure factor also, which we will come to later.
Right.
Third, the adoption of cabins, the adoption of fully built vehicles, along with the tonnage points, that has significantly increased. Because these are some of the, and there's a fourth one. Particularly bringing this because in trucks, radial tires was a taboo.
Oh, yes.
But now you see, barring some off-highway applications, almost 100% trucks are on radial tires. So that's as far as trucks are concerned. The small commercial vehicles, the only small commercial vehicles one could recall before this century is 3-wheelers and tempos. Somewhere at the beginning of this century, the small commercial vehicle segment was actually created. And today, that's the largest segment in commercial vehicles in numbers. And there are so many varieties of them. At virtually 100 or 50 kilogram tonnage points, you have vehicles. Plus so many applications that they serve, so many body-built applications that they serve. Many trucks and pickups together is a revolution that happened in the transportation in India in this century. Third, coming to buses. In the previous decade and even early in this century, buses were an extension of a truck. You had a truck chassis, you can slap on a body on it, right, put a few seats in it, and you call it a bus. Maybe a little tweak here and there in the powertrain. But over a period of time, the buses also evolved and many revolutionary changes have happened in the buses in India.
True.
Some of the big changes are you have a dedicated bus chassis, which is understanding the bus requirement. You have chassis-less buses and therefore leading to low-floor buses.
Right.
You have body, now not a truck chassis on which you slap a body and put seats on. You have properly designed buses, right, which take care of aesthetics, which take care of comfort. And it's a large passenger car, many of the buses that you see today.
True.
And there's also development in terms of multi-axle buses, in terms of sleeper coaches, and of course, air conditioning to a considerable extent. So these are significant changes if you look at segment specific. Overarching commercial vehicles, the big change has been driven, if you ask me, by a regulation first. The rapidly accelerating emission norms have led to a lot of change across the entire vehicle and across the commercial vehicles. Of course, in passenger cars and two-wheelers also. But we're talking about commercial vehicles. Change in emission norms have led to significant technological changes and development all across. I'll talk about specifics. The second one is regulation on safety. Although in varying degrees between trucks and buses or specifics like school buses, hazardous goods, etc., safety regulations have also been improving and pushing us to much better technology and much better development, which is good for the society at large. The third one, more recent, it's happening in the last few years and begun to proliferate now in a what looks like a very large change over the next couple of decades is the alternate fuels.
Right.
Otherwise, commercial vehicles was almost entirely diesel.
Absolutely.
We never heard of anything else in commercial vehicles. And whatever little we heard of CNG was confined to a few states, probably confined to buses. We heard a little bit of LPG
Right.
in cars to some extent. But today you have, along with diesel, you have gasoline, you have CNG,
Yes.
you have electric, you have hybrid, and soon to come many more. Probably
Oh,
hydrogen
absolutely,
in
yes.
internal combustion engine format, hydrogen in fuel cells format, and various options in hybrid.
Correct.
These are the possibilities that are emerging. While the technology was there probably for the last 50, 60 years, it's very soon becoming a commercial reality. Already the electric vehicles and buses have to a large extent become viable. Electric vehicles and small commercial vehicles have become viable. CNG is of course viable in across the complete range. It just had to proliferate to the states. So these are three major changes, if you ask me, in the commercial vehicle landscape, along with, of course, many other things. I said I'll talk a little bit on detail on the emission. We were slow to start in the country. We really had some serious emission norms coming in 1996 and then 2000.
Correct.
In a full 10 years after that, we shifted to the next norm. But in the last decade, we have rapidly accelerated BS2 to BS3 to BS4. We jumped BS5, we've gone to BS6, and now we are into BS6 phase 2. We're already looking at what's beyond that.
Yes.
So from being virtually the last or almost the last in the world, we have come to being at par with the world in terms of emission.
True.
And that's led to a major change in terms of engine technology first, engine and fuel injection technology. We were basic engines, low power, low torque engines with inline fuel injection pumps. It moved to rotary, it moved to common rail diesel injection. There's a hell of a lot of electronics in the vehicle now, and a whole laboratory at the tailpipe, the after treatment system. It's a complete change in the engine and associated accessories. Along with that, with the increase in power, with the increase in torque as demanded by the number of axles going up, tonnage going up, better roads, therefore speed going up and all, the powertrain also had to change.
True.
So you have better transmissions, you have better axles, and with the speed, the need for safety is also increased for better braking systems, etc. So the complete vehicle has undergone a transformation and continuously. With each emission norm, the time required for development has come down, the number of varieties have proliferated, the demands from the customer system, I'm saying customer system, about cost, about efficiency, about time has also increased. So if you look back now from where we were at the beginning of the century to where we are today, it's a fantastic
Huge jump.
transformation, huge transformation in the commercial vehicles across the board.
But tell me, as an OEM, how challenging is it for you? You know, jumping from BS3 to BS4, you had time. 4 to 6 was really within a short span of time, the fastest in the world, I think.
Multiple challenges, Girish. It's not
Back
an
end,
easy job
it
at all.
would have been crazy for you guys.
Oh, it is crazy. See, typically a commercial vehicle at the beginning of this decade, this century, would have taken anywhere between 36 to 42 months if you have to design it, test it internally first, validate all the parameters, do user trials, and then finally put it in the market. And that is for one truck.
Right.
Now you're talking of a range of trucks with multiple variants suitable for different applications, and that is to be brought into the country because your next norm is just 3 years away.
Yes.
Your design time is cut down to about a year so that you can still validate. Now earlier the validation was just accumulating some kilometers for the basic powertrain. Now the basic engine itself, because of the emission cycle, because of the summer cycle and the winter cycle,
Right.
that by itself takes 1 year. And then you have the powertrain accumulation. And with each emission change, we're not just compliant to emission norms, we're also doing value add for the customer. Because the change in emission is an expensive addition. There's a whole lot of technology which our vendors have invested in, which we companies have invested in. and it translates to acquisition cost for the customer.
Absolutely.
How do you recover all that cost in such a short time? And if your next cycle is just 3 years away, you don't have a long enough product cycle.
Correct.
You have to get all the costs within that time. So cutting down your design cost in time, cutting down your sourcing cost in time, cutting down the technology cost in time, and making sure that you have modular technologies, making sure that you have scalable technologies for the next norm and the next norm, multiple challenges.
And also factoring the forecast of how many vehicles you would sell by the end of that period, you know, when you shift from BS4 to BS6.
Commercial vehicle is an industry which is like that. If you started a down cycle and your product is coming to the market in an up cycle, it's fine. But if it's the other way around, it's chaos.
I think I think when we shifted from BS3 to BS4, there was quite a lot of stocks that were left behind with OEMs.
And we were caught in surprise where the norms changed from date of manufacture to date of registration.
Yes. Too many
Plus
surprises.
BS4 to BS6, we were also having this COVID in between,
Yes.
which really put out. But like I said earlier, how has the system adapted to it? First of all, if you look at vendors and certain key technological vendors, they are looking well ahead now rather than looking at 3 years hence or 5 years hence. This is a technology development horizon which is running into decades. Similarly, OEMs themselves have started looking at several decades ahead.
Right.
The good thing about this global warming issue is all of us have a net carbon zero target.
Correct.
The country is running to 2070. Certain manufacturers are aiming at 2040 or 2045. So we are clear where we want to go and how we will get there. The roadmap is there. Things may change as we go along.
True.
But the planning horizon has now changed from a few years to a few decades.
Right.
And therefore, the approach towards modular technology, the approach towards scalable technology, as well as shared technology, all of that are approaches that are born out of these kind of rapid changes, which are helping us to adapt to the situation better and still meet the challenging requirements placed by the authorities, placed by our customers.
So we just spoke about, you know, commercial vehicles changing over the years. How does India stand in terms of a global perspective? How close are we to global trucks now?
At the beginning of this century, if you ask me, and this is not based on market research or assessment, it's my own assessment, I would have placed Indian commercial vehicles at the last quartile in the world. Over a period of time, due to various changes and advancements that we just discussed, today I would not only say top quartile, I would even hazard to say that we're in the top 5 countries as far as technology of vehicles are concerned. Why am I not placing us at the top? Is because there is still some gap in certain areas. If you look at the horsepower per ton of our trucks, if you look at the speeds at which our trucks can travel, and if you get certain other safety features, there are still gaps when compared to the developed countries. If you look at European trucks or if you look at American trucks, there are still certain gaps. But otherwise, if I put Europeans, Americans and Japanese at the top, we're pretty close there.
Okay.
In terms of the overall technology. Commercial adoption is in varying degrees, but we're rapidly getting there. In terms of emission norms, we're as good as anywhere else in the world. In terms of safety and comfort, few more notches, and I'm sure we'll get there, especially with the kind of infrastructure improvement we are seeing. It's only a matter of a few years before we get there.
That was part 1 of our interaction with Mr. R. Ramakrishnan. We have no doubt that Indian trucks are almost at par with other global trucks, and as Mr. R. Ramakrishnan puts it, we are just a few notches away from them. So what exactly goes on the drawing board while designing a truck? We will continue this very engrossing conversation next week and also talk about how Ramki is fulfilling his passions post-retirement, one of which is photography. We leave you with some pictures clicked by Ramki at various locations. Until next week, stay safe and drive safe. Jai Hind.